Hello, ladies and gentlemen and business owners. This is Daryl Guberman. I am the CEO of Guberman PMC LLC, a quality consulting firm here in Connecticut. We've been assisting companies for almost 13 years now in consultation, also ISO certification, and all derivatives. My background is aerospace, medical implants, medical materials, printing, and plastic distribution, where we dealt with every industry under the sun. We have a very special guest here today. Mr. David Calhoun, CEO of a company fudging information, a Boeing aircraft. And I know what you're saying. Daryl, what are you doing? Why are you doing that? Well, I'm going to tell you why. Sit back, listen to this, and if you want to turn it off now. Because you know something, if you have a relative, and I predict this video, by the way, is about Boeing 737-9, doors blow out. Alaska Air QA specialist Daryl Guberman has warned about catastrophe. And let's go and get started. You will see the degradation of quality at Boeing because take a look at this title. Quality degradation bias infects manufacturing oversight. You will see this. And then you will see David Calhoun, the CEO, walking across a golf course while his plane's quality is failing. He has no clue. The only clue that he has about aerospace was when he worked for GE. It was also, I think he sat on Caterpillar's board as well. Maybe he should have stayed with the heavy-duty moving machines and the backhoes and all that. Maybe that would be his specialty, because being Boeing putting profits before people lives by hiding 737 MAX flaw designs, and it wasn't hiding. The FAA, in collaboration and association, sitting on the same board, ANSI, as Boeing, sitting together, turned a blind eye to it. And let's continue. ANSI, the American National Standards Institute, is a private, not-for-profit, non-governmental corporation that has both federal agencies and corporations on board. In 2015, then the chairman of the IAF, which is incorporated in Delaware, International Accreditation Forum. He was also on the 990 tax report as the principal, having complete control and command of the IAF. The IAF is an association of accreditation bodies worldwide. So ANSI and ANAP sit on there, the American National Standards Institute and the American National Crediting Board. ANSI took over complete control over ANAP in 2018. Randy, at the time, he was there from 2009 to 2015 with those titles. He handed over leadership of the IAF, the International Accreditation Forum. He handed over leadership in 2015. Now, Zhao Jinwu is a communist Chinese national who's been involved with our quality since 1994. He at the time is also the chief executive of the China National Accreditation Services in Beijing, China. In 2017, he was issuing a laboratory certification to no other than Wuhan, China, Bio-Level 4 lab that let that virus out. On top of that, he was the chairman of the IF, standing there in the lab at Wuhan, China, in the organization. And also on 2017, Randy was being advertised on the Department of Homeland Security's website. We have all of this, we don't make it up. The problem is he's a private concern. That's like Walmart being advertised on the FBI's website. That's basically the same thing. I always thought that that was separation between church and state, between the federal agencies and also the corporations. And it's not true, because as I showed you, ANSI and ANAP, both, they have them on their board, federal agencies and corporations. Long story short, a Miss Pamela Sale in 2017-18 gave under deposition about laboratory accreditation because she was the head of it for ANSI ANAP. And she said from one laboratory to another, there were variances. They lack protocol, which means you have failure. He gave a certificate, which is meaningless, to Wuhan, China. Also in 2018, you had members that went over to Wuhan, where the scientists in Wuhan lab said, we need training for our technicians. All of a sudden, a document pulled up, 2019 May, from no other than the Center for Disease Control, CDC. And it stated on page 3, and I quote, that the most important part of a bio-level hazard laboratory, and this training document was only made for one bio-level lab in Wuhan, no less, and it was Wuhan, China. And it stated that you must have trained technicians for laboratories to not have failures. Well, we saw what happened with that, didn't we? You have ANAP, who sits on ANSI's board. You have the factor that ANSI took over complete control over ANAP in 2018. They also sat between 2015 and 21. They're presently still there on the IAF, the International Accreditation Forum. ANSI and ANAP are underwriters, which means they take full responsibility for failures. Like the door popping off the Boeing aircraft, they're part and parcel of that because they are underwriters. Means it's not just certifying the system like they used to say, but by them being underwriters, they take care of product liability. Don't let anybody, oh, I'm sorry, by the way. ANSI and ANAP deal intimately with the American Bar Association, the Department of Justice, you'll see it, the FBI. It's coming up. Make matters even better, ladies and gentlemen, you have two countries that are equivalent in accreditation to ANAP. So when David Calhoun's supplier portal states the third-party registrar for an ISO or AS9100 certificate must be ANSI ANAP. Why? They sit on the board. You'll see that shortly. They sit on the board of ANSI ANAP. So they must be either ANSI ANAP accredited or an internationally equivalent. Here is their internationally equivalent. Iran and Pakistan, and I don't make this up. This is a fucking fact. By the way, fucking is a product liability word if you're going down on one of those ships. Like when that door popped out, I'm sure some of those passengers either said it out loud or in their head, we're fucked. That's a quality term, right, Dave? Or does he say that on the golf course? I don't know. So anyway, you have that. You have Pakistan, who harbored Osama bin Laden. You have this guy over here, and all of them said that we helped the 9/11. Doesn't anybody remember that? Or we only do it every September just to remember it. Almost like what is forgotten. December 7th, 1941, Pearl Harbor Day. It's like, it's off into the memory now. It was 75 years ago, 80 years ago. We don't know. Well, that's it. And I don't blame the people of these countries. I blame the politicians. Now we bring Boeing. Boeing involved. Here we go. Just several weeks ago, Boeing got snagged again. You'll find the information down in the description. Everything's down in the description. Snagged by not writing down the temperatures and pressures in their autoclave processes for the V-22 Osprey. You had, after that article came out, 3 weeks before, you had a V-22 Osprey go down. Now, I've talked to some of my Marine friends who fly around in those things, and they say, Daryl, I don't like to go on them. They're not good. Well, some politician is getting their pockets paid. Don't worry about it. So let me just go through a little bit of the process here. Boeing came out with a procurement specification for all their suppliers. They stated right over here that if you are AS9100, they didn't really qualify that, but look, they sit on ANSI ANAP's board. Who else are they going to say is qualified, right? So they said that if you are AS9100, basically, you give us your certificate, you give us your parts. We don't have to send any source inspectors anymore. It started in 2002, ladies and gentlemen. This will also be down in the description. You can read it yourself. In 2009, the FAA seceded inspection to Boeing. That meant that Boeing can design, build, fly, sign off, and the FAA will initial it. It's good. And here it is. FAA grants Boeing more autonomy for certification. Basically, it was self-certification, meaning that Boeing employees represented the FAA. And listen, if your boss comes by and says, listen, we have to get that part out, you know? We used to have a saying in aerospace, the end of the month push for the beginning of the year crash. I guess it is pervasive throughout all of aerospace. Here is Boeing's supplier portal, and it says ANSI, ASQ, ANAM. Now, ANSI and ASQ used to own 50%, along with ANSI owning 50%, and as I said, it changed over to ANSI ANAP, one company per se. Speaking of frauds and fakes, here are some articles Other than the article about the V-22 and from 2007 to 2018, they were not writing down temperatures and pressures on an autoclave process that is very important when it comes to composite material. That is my background: composites, non-ferrous metals, aluminum, titanium alloys. So I would say that in the confines of quality, I am an expert when it comes to composite technology. In fact, I've got several diplomas in that, composite engineering technology. You have the factor that Boeing was fudging documentation. You have the IAQG. Now, the IAQG also sits on ANSI's board. The International Aerospace Quality Group Online Aerospace Supplier Information. This means that Boeing, Lockheed go into the system and ensure that the companies that they're using are AS9100 certified by no other than ANAP. Most of them that sit there are that. So I want to read you this procedure that started in 2003. Related to IAQG, but this was written by no other than ANAP for that OASIS database, the Online Aerospace Supplier Information System. You tell me if this is quality, ladies and gentlemen. 4.2. An AS9100 certified organization does not have an option to be excluded from the Online Aerospace Supplier Information Systems database. 4.3. If an AS9100 organization refuses to be entered in the Online Aerospace Supplier Information Systems, for example, refuses to pay fees, their AS9100 certification will be taken away by their registrar or the accreditation body. Who sits there too? The Society for Automotive Engineers. They handle all the aerospace documentation. Why? Who the hell knows? You then have the FBI, or actually the FAA, sitting right over by Boeing. Now, I don't know if I have the placard of Boeing, but I will surely attest that Boeing does sit on ANSI's board. Again, you have the FBI, with Christopher Wray always saying we must maintain vigilance over communist China, yet his organization, by membership on ANSI ANAB and ANSI ANAB sitting on the IAF, they are part of the China issue, and Christopher Wray should be let loose and gone. Department of Transportation, they sit on there. This is a good one. Department of Defense, they sit on there. You also have, there you go, Department of Justice, and you have the Federal Trade Commission and so many others, and Boeing sitting on there as well. So this is the why we have quality in disarray in aerospace. Starting in 2002 with that procurement document that was sent to all the suppliers saying, hey, you're just certified, you can send us your parts, we don't have to spend any expenses on outside source inspectors. Isn't that nice? It's the same way with NADCAP for special processes, for anodize, for prime, for heat treat, for welding, etc. Boeing, I understand, developed that scam of a, and it's a scam of a certification. Why doesn't Boeing put their money where it should be? Get those source inspectors out there. I'm not saying that they eliminated it totally, but we wouldn't have quality issues as bad as they are. And people will say to me, well, Daryl, that was only one incident. The door flew off the plane. Well, when your freaking relatives are on that plane that goes down, look me up. 203-556-1493 or Daryl, D-A-R-Y-L, TQRS@yahoo.com. You can't make this shit up. You know something? When a passenger says we're fucked, that means the quality of the product isn't good.